Welcome to the Tech Transfer Podcast. I'm Dave Brown, and I'm here with Sandy Peterson, the original game designer for Doom, and we're talking about tech startups and his history in games.
My name is Sandy Peterson. I got my start, I went to BYU in the 70s, graduated in 1980 in zoology, after which I went to a game company in California called Chaosium. Worked there for about 8 years doing role-playing games. I did a game called Call of Cthulhu, which became a pretty well-known role-playing game. It still sells well worldwide in about 20 languages. I then went to Microprose Software in Maryland, where I worked on computer games. One of the ones I worked on, though I was not the lead by any means, was the game Civilization, which still has descendants today. In 1993, I went to id Software, where I worked on Doom, and Doom 2 and Quake. And then from there, I went to Ensemble Studios, where I worked on the Age of Empires series, and Halo Wars and things like that. From there, I taught school at the graduate level at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and which I will say is a pretty much wholly secular university, though they do have a chapel on the campus. And went to, I taught there 2 years, then went back into the board game industry, where I founded my own board game company, Petersen Games, and we've been doing tabletop board games ever since.
And so you started by studying zoology. What were you planning to do at that point? Was gaming kind of a hobby?
Gaming was kind of always a hobby that obsessed me, and I'm not sure I just liked zoology, so I was interested in it. I will say this: when I was at Microprose, there was a cluster of game designers there. So one day we took a poll of all the designers to see what it was that we had studied in college. And I was zoology, then there was music, and there was history, and there was English, and there was all these different things. And what we realized that we had in common is that we were all interested in all those different things. But for each of us, one of them was a slightly more interesting, but none of us were obsessed with any one thing. So just kind of like whatever happened to bubble to the top at that point is what we studied. So we wanted to study what we wanted to study. And
so in your teaching at Southern Methodist University, they probably have game design courses of study now, right?
They had a game design course. It was for computer games. They had courses in production and art and programming and doing a whole game on a team, and then game design itself. And I was the game design itself guy.
Okay.
So I would lecture in that.
Okay. But back in the 70s, they didn't have courses like that probably.
No.
And you studied zoology, and then
I played games back in the 70s. I didn't even, like many people even today probably, I didn't even think of games as having a designer. They just grew off the apple tree. You go pluck a game from the game store. So I never thought of games as having designers.
So what made you take the first game design job?
What happened is in 1974, the game Dungeons & Dragons came out. And I was starting to play it with my friends. We played at BYU in the Wilkinson Center.
Okay.
And then we started going to other role-playing games, and I started developing. If you're playing a role-playing game, then you actually have to develop a lot of your own stuff. Especially since the first D&D, like the combat system was broken, the magic system it was like you had to make up everything. It just gave you the core of the idea.
And you're creating maps.
And I was creating maps, and I started playing a game called RuneQuest, started making monsters and stuff for that. Then a friend got me to contact the president of Chaosium, Greg Stafford, and we started corresponding, and then he started publishing things by me, and then finally I did the Call of Cthulhu, the whole game, and then that was a huge hit. And even today, it's like 90% of a Chaosium sales. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, and so from that, you then leapt to video games. So the what I read, John Romero in Doom Guy talks about hiring you for id, and he says that he was nervous hiring you. They had just started making Doom, and he knew he needed a game designer. He wanted to hire you.
He did want to hire me.
He said that he could tell from. He could tell from your resume that you were LDS, and he didn't know if you'd be comfortable with the language of id.
Well, they did swear a lot of id, and my attitude is to be like in the world but not of the world. Right. And I will say that when I got mad or really annoyed, then I would cuss too, because I'm not a perfect person. But I tried to hold the line at not using the Savior of the Lord's name in vain. But occasionally a bad word would slip my lips there, but not too often. Wendy doesn't hear me swear, right, Wendy? There you go. That's my wife over there. So yeah, he was the thing that I think convinced him to hire me was we were at dinner together, because you have dinner with the new hire, right? And it was tiny. There was like 4 people in it. And so we're at dinner. We started talking about games, and I was talking about games, and John Romero was talking. We were both getting super excited about games. Then after, and he was the guy that was most into games at his software. John Carmack, Adrian Carmack games were like just like a peripheral to doing what
They were
they really
business
love
guys.
programming it, right? But John Romero loved games, so we left, and later on they told me that John Romero was super impressed because it was the first time he met someone who was as focused on games as he was.
That's
So
interesting.
that was where that came from.
And you still interact with him, I think. And
Yeah,
the
occasionally
game-
we work together. Right? We haven't worked together since 1997, but
okay. It seems like you have a friendly relationship.
yeah,
And-
sure. Yeah, I would say something that he didn't like, or he thought I was getting it wrong on, and he would correct me, and then I would say, well, to be fair, like
Yeah.
for example, I was saying I designed the original first level of Doom, but then John Romero totally changed it, and he said, well, I was always supposed to design the first level of Doom. You didn't have to do it. That was always the plan. Sorry, I said, well, I'm sure you're right, John, but no one ever told me I wasn't supposed to do it, so I
Yeah.
did it anyway because communication at id was like supernaturally bad.
Yeah. Well, and when you started there, your first interview with him, did you feel like, oh, they're creating Doom and it's going to be amazing? Did it sound breakthrough for you?
It didn't. It looked pretty amazing to me when I was there. I'd already seen their game Wolfenstein, which I liked a lot, and this was better.
Okay.
And so I was pretty excited. And what made them hire me? Well, I can go into it in length, but maybe we don't have time for that.
Very good.
But
Well, I
basically,
remember.
basically what happened is that they had been disappointed in their previous designer and decided, and the programmers had concluded that designers are bad and they don't make a game better, so you don't want designers. And they just wanted to hire an artist to do the levels. And the artist said, no, designers are good. We just didn't have the right designer for this job. And so they had two artists come in and try to use Doom-Ed, we called it, spelled like doomed, was the editor, and to make levels. And then they had the artists forced the programmers to bring in one designer, and they looked at my resume and said, if anyone's a designer, he is. Look, he worked on all these things. So I came in and I took the tools, and the previous artist had done like a little spiral staircase made of all silver, and that was his thing. And I took it, I started making a level, and there was acid levels that rose and fall, and there was trapdoors, and there was monsters, and there was all the, it was like a real level. It's level E2M6, if you want to know what the very first Doom level I made ever was. And then that they were just blown away. They like okay, this is what a designer can do. So then they liked me.
Okay, and I've told you, but I remember playing in the math lab in the basement of the Talmadge. We had Next computers. We were playing Network Doom in 1994.
I remember
and it was
the
amazing.
Next computers. We had one at we had them at id.
Yeah.
So here's a fun fact.
Yeah.
So we hired this guy, a freelancer who lived in I think California, to do the networking code for us, so you could play head to head.
Yeah.
Okay. And we all thought that nobody would ever play head to head.
Okay.
That would be super rare. Because all previous attempts to do that, which I have been involved in, a major one, Command HQ, completely failed. No one ever played head-to-head. Everyone just played solo. And so we thought, and we played it head-to-head, and we left the head-to-head stuff in because we liked playing it. We didn't think anyone else would do it. And anyway, 2 weeks before Doom goes out, we called the guy in California to get his code, and we talked to his boss. And the idea, we thought we had an arrangement. He was going to work for them till this time, then he was going to come work for us. And the boss said, "Oh, we told you he's going to work for you?" And we said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, the guy's a pathological liar. He just took your money and didn't do anything." And so you can sue him for it or whatever, but he's not going to come. And so we're like, dang. So so we had no code for networking. So John Carmack hacked something together in like a week. And it went out with that. And it was this terrible code that multiplied packets according to how many people were on the network, depending on if they were playing Doom or not. So it instantly crashed any system larger than a certain. We got banned in college networks all over the country. And then we got someone to come in and fix it. But
Okay, well, that was amazing. And it was a breakthrough. And
it was the first game that people played head-to-head a lot. And now it's like universal. If a game isn't head-to-head, you want to know why.
Right.
But Doom did that, and we were completely taken by surprise.
Yeah, it was the first time I'd ever been in a game with other people. It was amazing.
I know. And we heard about people all the time. They'd get in the game with like their marketing director that they were mad at, and they blow them up 50 or 60 times, and then they're okay. They're friends again. They kind of got their vengeance, and they're buddies.
Yeah, that's great.
Because all the smack talk and the combat in Doom really does bring you closer.
Yeah, absolutely. So and it's had this cultural impact. The work you did back then. The Bennett, our engineering lead, wants me to ask you if you're aware of the does it run Doom meme? Do you see that around ever?
Yes, I have seen it. I've seen people try to run Doom on like Nokia phones and stuff, and it's like it's crazy.
Inside Minecraft, someone has built a computer that you can run Doom on and play the game within the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's gone so far. Well, here's a fun fact about Doom for people then. So, actually, it's about Wolfenstein. Nintendo wanted us to do Wolfenstein for Nintendo, Super Nintendo. And so it was my job to modify all the levels to make them so stupid and simple that I got all the dirty jobs, right? To make that Nintendo could run it. But they had some rules for it. The first rule was that we had a swastika to choose the level because it was like in Nazi Germany.
Right.
And they had us take the swastika out. And I was okay with that because the reason for it was that they had a guy working at Nintendo in Washington who'd been a Holocaust survivor and he didn't want to see it. And we said, okay, not a problem. It's still going to be in the game though.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other request was that we couldn't have dogs.
Why no
There's
dogs?
police dogs. There's police dogs in the game that you shoot. They're bad guys.
Oh,
we couldn't have dogs because it's bad to shoot dogs.
It's animal cruelty.
You can shoot humans, you understand. But not dogs. So we replaced them with giant rats. But they bark like dogs and act like the dogs. They just look like giant rats.
So it was on Nintendo, huh?
It was on Super Nintendo, yeah. Then Doom later on was on it too.
Okay. Oh wow.
And I had to do all those modifications too. We didn't have, but there was no dogs in Doom, so they were okay shooting the people there.
Yeah. Okay. So you did that, and you were there for you were definitely on Doom 2 and Doom 3, right?
I was there from 1993 to 1997. I was all through. I was at the last part of Doom 1, but I did most of the levels. I did 17 I did 20 of the 27 levels, and then I was there through the entirety of Doom 2, and I did 17 of the 32 levels, and then I was on there for the entirety of Quake, where I did one of the 4 episodes. So I did like a fourth of them, and then I started on Quake 2. And then I left, and then they pulled all the stuff I did out, and it wasn't there anymore. So there's not much of me left in Quake 2, which is fine.
Okay.
They have the right to do that.
So id was a tech startup. They probably didn't think of themselves that way. It was more like an artistic endeavor, right?
Yeah.
And so, but then you went to Ensemble, which sounds more like a traditional company.
Ensemble was, so what happened with Ensemble is that there was a thing called Ensemble Corp, and it was a partner with Microsoft, and it did like business software. And the owner of it, Tony Goodman, was a genius business manager, who he was kind of wacky, like a lot of entrepreneurs, and that's fine. And he wanted to do computer games. So he founded a separate Ensemble company to do the video games. And he took like his best programmers from the Ensemble Corp to work on the video games, and they designed Age of Empires. And then that eventually, I think, got bigger than the Ensemble Corp, but Ensemble Corp funded us initially. And then I got there near the end of Age of Empires 1. And then I did the expansion, the Conquerors. Then I was on all the other products they ever did. So
okay. And when you come into a project like that later on, you're making decisions about design. Have they already coded things? They have to change direction, or how does that work?
Well, what happens is that when you come in late in a project and you have a brilliant design idea, you go and say, hey, I think we should do X. And they say, that's already coded, so we can't do that. Okay. So a lot of what you do as a game designer is you're looking for ways to do things that won't impact the code or the art that you can do some other way. So you're like, maybe I can put it in the database. I can just make the units faster by increasing their speed in the database. That doesn't take any kind of effort. And then the artists say, no, now their feet move too slow when they're there's always some ramifications, right? Yeah. But you spend a lot of time. The whole thing is a duel to the death between the artists and the programmers, and then the game designers are kind of in the middle as the gasket between them, trying to make everyone happy. Because the artists and programmers are like completely different personality types, and when there's friction in a project, that's usually where it is. Yeah. Either there between the project and the management if you have sucky managers.
Yeah. Well, so you went to Southern Methodist University and you're teaching. So when you're teaching game design, what are kind of the key principles? What do they need to know?
Okay, so I mean, it's a whole semester-long course, right? So I can't really sum it up in 5 minutes. But one of the secrets of being a game designer that is really critical that people don't think about is the first thing. Obviously, you have to be obsessed with games. You have to think about games a lot. Like the main way I perceive the world is as games. Like I will look at a building and I'll say, I wonder how much damage it would do to fall off that height. Which is a stupid way of looking at it, really. Yeah. Or I'd say, oh, this is an interesting room I'm in. Could I do a firefight in this room that would be interesting? That kind of thing. Okay. Or I'd read about some kind of animal that, like platypuses don't have stomachs. I just learned that this week. Okay, they have no stomach, so they have to constantly eat to keep the food going through their digestion. So I said, okay, how would I use that in the game? What would an animal like that didn't have? I guess it would constantly be eating all the time. And if you could starve it to death in combat, that'd be kind of cool thing. Anyway,
how did you get so interested in that game frame of mind?
When I was in grammar school, I would stay in from recess sometimes to play Clue or Stratego. I just have always
Okay.
liked games. Anyway, the second thing that's important for a game designer is that you have to be able to explain yourself to other people. You have to be really able to communicate.
Okay.
Okay, so because programmers are like often the strong silent type that speak in monosyllables, and artists don't make themselves clear, you
Right.
know. And so you have to be the guy that clarifies things and makes it clear. And you have to be able to write. You have to write your stuff without too many grammar. English skills are useful.
Yeah.
And the third thing is you have to get your stuff done on time. You have to finish your jobs. It's so easy to have a game go on forever and ever and ever, and you have to pick that cutoff point and say the game is done here, and then it's out, and then you're unhappy forever at how you blew it on that game.
Yeah.
And that's every game designer has that feeling that if only I'd had another month,
Right.
but we don't.
Well, so communication, one of the key aptitudes then?
Very, very important for a game designer.
Okay. I always feel like in tech transfer, we're between business and academia, so it's a little bit of translation role, a little bit.
Oh
same
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Because the business guys work largely by communication, and
Yeah.
the tech guys, like I said, they're like a bunch of people that can barely communicate. You know, they're like Neanderthals in the cave with their new rocks. And I say this as a guy that person that loves those tech guys unconditionally.
Yeah.
You know, but
Okay. Well, so you were teaching, and then in 2013, you did a Kickstarter campaign,
I did.
probably just for fun. What was your goal
what had
there?
happened is that I'd left SMU, and I had I'd done a failed iPhone app company with doing games for the iPhone, and it totally flopped. And so I was penniless, didn't have a job.
Is that because the format's so simple or different, or what?
No,
what was
I
bad
think
about
my game was fine. It just like not everything takes off on
Yeah. Right.
on the
Randomness.
phone, right? So we were trying to do the computer game version of business on an iPhone. I don't think it really
Right.
carried across.
Okay.
Anyway, so this company in India calls me, Hyderabad, and they say, we want to hire you to come be our fun budsman, make our games fun. Okay? And I said, okay. And they said, we'll give you a share of the company, I think 6%. We'll give you a 6-digit salary. We'll give you your own driver because white people must not drive in Hyderabad. Give you your own apartment, and my wife loves Indian food, and it'll be for a year. And every time I said a year, right, they said, well, maybe you can go another one after that. So I said,
Yeah.
you know, it'll be a fun adventure. So I'm all set to go, and I'm thinking before my business partner said you should do a board game based on Cthulhu because you can use that on Kickstarter to get a little extra money. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. I'll get like $200,000 or something to help support me while I'm in India.
Yeah.
And instead it was 1.4 million. So I called the Indians and said I wasn't going to go. I was gonna manage this Kickstarter. And so
Yeah. So it raised 7 times what you were expecting. Why?
Yes.
Why do you suppose? Like, how did that happen?
I think it was a combination of the fact that the art was amazeballs, and that was Richard Long's doing. He worked with me, obviously. I gave him. He didn't know anything about Lovecraft, but the art is actually his, even though I helped direct some of it. Right? You know how
Yeah.
it is. It's art director doesn't know any art skills, but I can get him to do it.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was a game by Sandy Peterson, who was a beloved game designer who'd been around since 1981. People loved my games,
Right.
you know, and so they trusted me. And they liked me, and also the game was Cthulhu, which is kind of I did the very first Lovecraft game called Cthulhu, and so here I am doing what I thought was my swan song. The plan was this would be my last Lovecraft game, and then I go and design things in India for the phone app. And so the last game I would do for myself. So I pulled out all the stops to make it the ultimate Sandy Peterson game, and then I was going to assembly retire. Then instead it did crazy, and then instead of being a swan song, it was like with Phoenix of Rebirth. So
And was it just by chance that people? So you had kind of core fans. Did they just find the Kickstarter listing, or were you communicating with them somehow?
We were trying to communicate with them, but I think mostly they found it on their own. But here's the fact. So I've designed a lot of games. Okay. When I was designing Cthulhu Wars at a time when things were tight, we were getting ready to move to India, I didn't have a good job. Like, this game's design flowed more smoothly than any other design I've ever done. I literally feel I was like blessed by God to like be inspired to do that. I mean, it seems crazy to say God helped me do a Cthulhu game, but that's what it felt like, you know. In fact, when I did my first version of it, I'm playing it with my friend. I did the very first version. I played it with my friends, and then one of the friends says, "How long have you been working on this?" And I was too embarrassed to tell him that it was only like 10 days. So I said, "Oh, a few weeks." And he said, "It seems really polished." And I was like, "Whoa!" So that would make me feel good. So
Yeah. And it does look. I've seen the original Kickstarter listing, and it is really well done. Who helped you do that? Did you hire some, or did you just
Robert
do it?
Atkins was my business partner. He's the one that got me to do the Lovecraft thing.
Okay. And then, so you end up launching Petersen Games. Is it because of the Kickstarter?
Yes.
Okay. So you canceled India.
I canceled India. In the middle of the Kickstarter, I said, I can't go to India. And they were sad, but I hadn't actually signed anything.
Yeah.
And then we put the company to basically sell Cthulhu Wars, and then we did other games on it. There's Planet Apocalypse, which is a cooperative game based on the Book of Revelation. We did Hyperspace. We did The God's War, which is about the creation myth of this fantasy world, and we did a bunch of other games. So it now has a bunch of things, and they're available right now at Quimbleys.com. And finally, I have retreated from being a board game publisher, and Petersen Games is becoming a design studio that will let other companies have all the headache of publishing.
And were you acquired by Quimbleys, or is that like a partnership?
Oh, no. They don't own us. We don't own them. They're they're our major publisher right now, but we can make deals with anyone. So if you know someone who's really interested in doing an awesome game based about starship combat, then I've got one all finished.
Yeah. So, and if anyone doesn't know, the Cthulhu mythology is from H.P. Lovecraft stories, right?
H.P. Lovecraft. He wrote in the 1920s and 30s. He was a seminal character in American horror. Basically, there's Lovecraft and Poe was like axe murders and madness and curses, and Lovecraft is like aliens and other dimensions and also madness, because madness is big in both of them. Yeah. So it's a very different approach. If you've ever seen a movie that has a hideous tentacle monster, it's probably influenced by Lovecraft.
Yeah. And was he a personal favorite, or is this just going back to your first game?
He's a personal favorite.
Okay.
From the age of 8 years old till the age of 25, I was obsessed with Lovecraft. Not obsessed, but I liked Lovecraft a lot. And every single person I knew who'd heard of Lovecraft during that time had heard of him because I had told them, because he was vanishingly obscure. Yeah. And thanks to my game, Call of Cthulhu, helped make him better known. And I know this for a fact because people are always telling me, I read Lovecraft because of your game. I think, in addition, starting in 1985, Stuart Gordon's movies, Reanimator, From Beyond, those things, also that spread knowledge through the film geek background. And I was going through the role-playing gamer background. But both of them kind of work together to make all the nerds know about Lovecraft. So
yeah, definitely in recent years you see way more H.P. Lovecraft in pop culture, right?
Well, I couldn't find very many books of Lovecraft when I was a kid. So but when I was 13, I found out that BYU Library, which I was able to get a student a library card for, had Lovecraft books in the library. So I'd come and check them out. Okay, and I checked them out for like 3 or 4 years. Every few months, I'd go check out the Lovecraft books to read them again. And then I went back in high school, and they were all locked up because somebody had found out that these were valuable first edition Arkham House books worth hundreds of dollars, and they're not going to let 14-year-olds check these suckers out. And so they were locked up, so I could never get them again.
Your timing was good.
Shortly afterwards, Ballantine came out with a new paperback edition, and Lovecraft was back in print after decades. And so I was okay. But BYU Library played a major part in me being able to read all the Lovecraft stuff.
That's amazing. So, so you are an entrepreneur. Like you started the Petersen Games.
Part of Petersen Games.
What's your advice if someone wants to start up a company, gaming or otherwise? What would you tell them?
Have a good idea for a business model. Look really, really carefully at your business manager. Okay. Make sure that he's the right one, and it's easy to be deceived. Mm-hmm. So that's my advice.
Make sure you trust the right people.
There was a rock band. I can't remember the name of it, back in the 80s, and they were just a pure rock band that did hard rock music. And they said, the more we learned, we just wanted to do music, but the more we learned about math and business and finance, the safer our band got, and the more money we got, and the better able we were to play things. That directly made us a better band. So that's what if you're a game designer, do that.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So Gene Simmons has written some good business books, for example. So, okay. Well, great. Well, this has been so interesting, Sandy. So just a couple quick pop culture questions. What do you think is the best game out there? Have you seen anything recently that impressed you?
And I can't name my own?
Other than your own? No, you can name your own.
My favorite computer game of all time is Concept Saga.
Okay, I don't know that one.
Super obscure. It's kind of a combination of Magic the Gathering and Monopoly. It sounds crazy, but it works. It has the most depth of any computer game. It's incredible.
Okay, fantastic. And And what do you see as trends going forward? Like what good things are happening out there?
Well, I like the fact that games on the phones are getting more and more powerful. I like the fact that Kickstarter has come along and made it possible for some guy, like in his bathroom, well, maybe, or his garage, to make a game and get it published and do things with crowdfunding. You don't have to go to a big publisher anymore. You don't have some guy in a suit telling you can't publish a game anymore. Right. Now it's the people can do it. So this really is the golden age of gaming. Like there's more games. You can have games about wacky subjects. Because like there's like a well-known game is called Bonanza, BOHN, because it's a German word for bean. It's about planting bean fields. It's highly popular, and it's just like this crazy topic because you can go directly to the crowd and say, hey, I've got this crazy game idea. And the other thing is, if you are going to use advice for you, if you are going to use a crowdfunding for your game, and the crowdfunding attempt doesn't go well, like that's a gift from gold. You know that game won't sell. That's wonderful. You didn't have to put all the money into it. And don't say, oh, I'll have to try again. Say, okay, move on to the next thing, because now you know that's not going to work. And for centuries, people have wished they would know if their ideas for whatever would work ahead of time, and crowdfunding lets you do that.
Fantastic. Yeah, so validation, that's kind of the trend in teaching entrepreneurship. We want students to try out their ideas before they invest a lot of time and money in them. Well, great. Well, you've been part of several great startups, including tech startups. So, Sandy, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Pleasure to be here.
We'll be back